Today I want to talk about the sound differences between Luxman Class A and Pass Labs Class A, as well as compare those to the sound of tubes, right? So over the last, I don't know how many days, a week or so, I've been listening to the Luxman 595 Anniversary Edition Integrated Amplifier. Now this is technically, if we are to believe what we read online, Luxman's last Class A amplifier that they will be making. This 595 was a limited edition to 300 units worldwide. 100 of those units were allocated to the United States. I managed to get a hold of one, number 297 of 300, and I've been listening to it, comparing in my memory what it sounds like versus the Luxman 590 AX2, which is my number 2 favorite integrated of all time. I'll talk more about the 595 in a minute. I've also been listening to Pass Labs separates that I have here now, the XA 60.8 amps, which are all Class A, and the XP22 preamp. Now, in the past, I've had the Pass Labs integrated 250 and their INT 25 here in the room. I've also been listening to the Dennis Had Inspire set amp, the single-ended triode 300B amp from Dennis Had. I've listened to it with the DAC straight into it and using the Luxman and the Pass as the preamp for it. So in this video, I'm going to describe the sound of Pass Labs, the sound of Luxman, and the sound of a single-ended triode. And hopefully this can help you to, if you're thinking about these brands, it can help you to match the sound with your preferences and your speakers. We're going to start with Luxman. Now, back, I think it was 2018, I reviewed the Luxman 590 AX2. I bought that unit. I think I paid $9 grand for it from Arizona HiFi. And oh man, that integrated was so beautiful to look at. The build was top notch, made in Japan quality. Luxman has been around for 95 years, and they know how to make some beautiful stuff. Over the decades, they've had their ups and downs as far as quality of what they put out is concerned, but the 590 AX2 is an astonishing integrated amp, which is sadly now discontinued. There's no replacement for the 590 AX2, and from what I'm told, there will be no Class A replacement for the 590 AX2. Now, Luxman released the 595 Anniversary Edition, which on paper looks kind of like the 590 AX2 with a different external shell. Now, the 595 takes us back to 1989, to a design, I should say, that Luxman released in 1989. And in the flesh, it's stunning, it's gorgeous, it's understated. It's as beautiful as a Luxman integrated amp can get. It doesn't have the meters, but the meters kind of are not a mandatory thing. They're pleasing to the eye, but some may prefer the 595 style and looks. There have been 120 improvements in the 595 versus the 590, and I wasn't sure if I would be able to hear those differences, but plugging in the Luxman brought me back to that 590, the same signature sound, which is extended treble, neutral. It's this neutral amp. It's not really a warm, gooey amp. It's more of a neutral amp. Highly detailed, right? But a silky, velvety smoothness about it that allows you to listen without it ever going into that hard or bright territory. Luxman walks that line between warmth and detail. It's extended. It has impact. Drums have impact. It has density, a lot like that named Super Nate 3 I reviewed not so long ago. But the top end, the treble, seems just as extended, if not more so, but silkier and sweeter, right? The Luxman is about neutrality. If 12 o'clock dial on a clock is neutral, that's about where the Luxman would be. It's not thin or lean sounding, but it does offer up that transparency, that kind of open window to the music. It's a little bit faster sounding of an amp, but you're getting a pure 30 watts per channel of Class A, with the 595, and it has that Class A characteristic of that inner glow, that beauty. A lot of people try to say the Luxman sound is as close to tubes as you can get without running tubes. I'll talk about that in a second. So Luxman, neutrality, clean, transparent, magical. There is a slight warmth in the mids and across the frequency range because the solidity of the presentation. It's a very unique presentation that Luxman puts out with their integrated amps. But the 595 ASC does sound like a 590 AX2 on steroids. You're getting more of all that good, right? It seems more powerful. It seems more impactful. It seems like it's more energetic, but at the same time, it keeps that sweetness and that velvet-like smoothness to the music. So that's the Luxman sound. If you have warm speakers that lean a little bit warm, Luxman can really bring them to life, something like the 590 or a Class A Luxman amp. If you have speakers that are already thin or lean bright, you probably would want to look more into Pass Labs. These monoblocks here with the preamp from Pass Labs have a more refined sound than the Luxman 595. It's a little bit more of a wider presentation, a taller presentation. The Pass Labs separates paints a bigger picture in your listening room. Not that the Luxman is small. The Luxman has a nice wide sound stage. It's not the tallest, but it has depth and there's layering going on. Pass Labs paints a much taller and a little bit wider picture, and the imaging performance is a little more subdued. The top end is a little more subdued. The mid-range is a little warmer and plumper, and the bass is a little bit looser and more mellow with the Pass Labs. Now this holds true for the XA 60.8s, the integrated 60. Integrated compared to the Luxman, compared to say the Pass Labs integrated 250, which I proclaimed my favorite integrated of all time. The Pass Labs is a little, again, a little more gentler in the treble, a little more laid back, a little more expansive, a little more welcoming, right? Pass Labs does the holographic thing pretty well. The Luxman is not as holographic as the Pass Labs. So Pass Labs leans a little bit to the warm side of neutral, right? The big, spacious, warm side of neutral. Luxman leans neutral, right? But with the Pass Labs, you're getting more of those spatial qualities in the music, but it is a little warmer. And depending on the speakers you're running it with, Pass Labs can sound a little duller. With warm speakers, Pass Labs, something like the integrated 60 or the 60.8 monoblocks, can sound a little dull if you have too warm of a speaker. If you have a neutral speaker or one that leans a little bright, Pass Labs amplification, Class A I'm talking about specifically, can really open up your speakers and make them come alive. It's about that synergy, that matching of your amplification to your speakers, because there are some amps that lean cold and sterile, there are some that lean fat and warm, and there are some that lean neutral, and there's of course many in between. The same goes with speakers. If you pair a lean pair of speakers with a lean amp, it's a recipe for disaster. If you pair a warm amp, a big juicy sound, with a lean speaker, that can help fill out that speaker and bring more warmth. So Pass Labs, again, a little more warm, bigger, fuller, a little more of the spatial qualities going on, but it's a little more laid back, a little more rolled off on top. As we were listening, I decided to throw the 300B tube amp into the mix, and this is only 6 to 8 watts per channel. I used the Luxman as the preamp for the Inspire 300B, and that was the most ethereal, magical sound of all. It may not be to everyone's preference. It didn't have the big energetic kick of the Luxman, but it was more open than the Pass Labs. It was more holographic. It was more three-dimensional. The instruments with the 300B amp, like the drums and the guitars, kind of went a little bit into the background, and the star of the show with the 300B tube was that voice. The voice grew to become life-size, big as life, in the room, a little forward. That 300B tube is all about the voice. But we were playing some rock music as well, and it sounded good. Not as good as the Luxman, not as good as the Pass. But if you like to listen to vocals, jazz, acoustic music, nothing that I've heard beats a nice single-ended triode amp. So what Debbie said about the Inspire amp was angelic, ethereal. That was like, at the time, that was her favorite of all three. The Luxman running as a preamp into that 300B amp just provided such a sweet, magical sound. The 300B excelled on voices, that spatial quality, and just the bigness of the sound. So those are the sound differences between Luxman Class A and Pass Labs Class A, and I threw in the 300B amp from Dennis Had, which is also Class A, just for kicks, because they all sound completely different. With the DeVilles, I like them all. It would depend on the music I was listening to, but if I had to pick only one, that would be such a hard decision. I really wouldn't know what to pick. It would probably be the Luxman because it offers up the most versatility. It has a built-in phono stage, which is superb for moving magnet or moving coil. It does have a loudness button for super low volume listening to beef up the sound. Has the bass and treble controls. It's a limited piece. You won't be able to find any more of them. Supposedly it's the last Class A from Luxman, which will mean it will be sought after and desirable. Many years from now, people will be looking for this amp. So the Luxman is a wonderful, wonderful amp. I will do a full review of it here in a few weeks once I get a lot of time with it. But so far, it's a stunner. It's gorgeous. It's like a 590 AX2 on steroids. So there you go. Those are the differences in my room with my ears between Pass Labs and the Luxman sound. They're both Class A. They're both different though. And I hopefully this video helped some of you out there with making a decision between these two brands. So I'll see you guys next time. I have a bunch of reviews on the way. I will see you then. Bye.